Welcome to The Window on talkSPORT, brought to you by Intuit Quickbooks. Save time and unlock growth with integrated business tools and AI automation, all in one place. Alex, let's kick off with the vacant Manchester United role then. Quite a few developments over the weekend. Are the rumours true? Is it going to be Michael Carrick that potentially takes the helm?
Certainly looks that way. In fact, I would expect this to gather traction quite quickly now. We broke it exclusively on talkSPORT on Sunday night that Michael Carrick had inched ahead of his former teammate Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in the race for that interim role. I think the main reason for that is that United and the hierarchy there were a bit concerned by the fact that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's camp had made it public knowledge that if he did get the job until the end of the season, he would be keen to stay on longer term. That obviously isn't part of the plan. The reason they're hiring an interim is because they think come the summer there'll be some big names who would be interested in the role, the likes of Thomas Tuchel, the England manager, Mauricio Pochettino, now in charge of the USA national team, Carlo Ancelotti, even the Brazilian manager, and obviously the likes of Oliver Glasner and Andoni Iraola in the Premier League, whose contracts are up as well. I also think when we were reporting in the middle of last week that Ollie was the favourite, some on the United board were a bit aggrieved and a bit peeved that he was leaking that information, or rather his camp were. So Michael Carrick has kept his own counsel, kept his head down, and slowly but surely has manoeuvred himself to be the top choice. We're expecting talks over his backroom staff to take place over the next 24 hours. The players, bizarrely, considering they've just been knocked out of the FA Cup and they've got a derby to prepare for on Saturday, are not training on Monday and Tuesday. So the plan would be to get Carrick in place by Wednesday, potentially with Darren Fletcher, who has been the caretaker manager, staying on as one of Carrick's assistants. And obviously this is a sort of Liverpool boot room type appointment where the Manchester United hierarchy are hoping Carrick, someone who gets the club, someone who understands Manchester United's DNA, someone who will be welcomed by the supporters, can get enough of a tune out of a pretty poor squad to somehow earn a European place, maybe even a Champions League place in the final 17 games of the campaign.
United caretaker boss Darren Fletcher spoke to the media off the back of the 2-1 FA Cup loss to Brighton and was asked what Man United are missing at the moment.
Our confidence is low. I think the players have been used to playing in a certain style, and they've got to find a way to win football matches or see out football matches, or not concede goals to give yourself a platform to go and play. So that's where the team is at just now, a little bit fragile. You can see they're conceding goals, and you can see when they concede a goal that they find it difficult to respond to. And the only way around that is actually finding ways to dig deep and grind out a result sometimes. You know, hard work, graft, coming together as a team, and that's what they're going to have to do.
Crookie, he mentions, says fragile. And you just saying there that the club are, not training today and tomorrow. I mean, if you're mentally fragile, it can be seen in two ways. Obviously, you're giving them time off, which could help with mental fragility. But if they're mentally fragile, surely you've got to get them in. It's unacceptable that Manchester United have gone out of the FA Cup this early on. And we know that Brighton are a solid outfit. Man United haven't got European football this year. They're out of the Carabao Cup as well. I mean, give it to them. What was Sir Alex doing at this point in the season? Well,
I think that shows you how far that United have fallen, that seemingly the hierarchy there are just willing to accept the fact that for the first time since 1981-82, before I was born, by the way,
really?
Certainly before I started supporting the football club, believe it or not, that they've fallen at the first hurdle in both domestic cup competitions. And it's also the fewest number of games now, just 40 matches in all competitions they're going to play in a season for more than 100 years. So congratulations to Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos. You keep breaking the wrong kinds of records, but it's been a disaster. And the whole project so far has been a disaster. The only positive I can see from Sir Jim Ratcliffe taking charge of the day-to-day football operations is that they've improved the training ground. But everything else has gone backwards. You look at the farce when Erik ten Hag was given a new contract, even though they were openly sounding out potential replacements. They completely undermined him in the dressing room and he was sacked at some cost a few months later. They spent millions of pounds and months courting Dan Ashworth because he was, quotes, the best in class, according to Ratcliffe. He didn't last 5 minutes because he disagreed with the likes of Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada. You look at some of the players who were out there against Brighton. Manuel Ugarte, the obvious example, Patrick Dorgu as well. They're just not fit to wear that Manchester United shirt. And what they've done now is quite clever, really, with this appointment, because obviously they are bristling at criticism and they're susceptible to criticism of ex-players. That's why Ruben Amorim name-checked Gary Neville in what was effectively his farewell speech. They know that by hiring Carrick, and probably Fletcher as well, they're not going to get that level of scrutiny. Certainly Carrick is not going to come under the microscope in the same way that Ruben Amorim and Jose Mourinho and Louis van Gaal would have done from Gary Neville, etc., because they're all mates. They know the fans will accept it because he's a club legend, and they also have given themselves a very convenient excuse to write off this transfer window, because they'll turn around and say, well, look, we can't really bring in players because we don't know who the manager will be next summer. And I think there's a real danger that what they've effectively done, because they're out of the 2 cups, is they've written off the season. There's 17 games to play in the Premier League. Interim managers don't really work. And listen, I wish Michael Carrick all the best. I think he did a good job at Middlesbrough. They were 21st when he took over. He got them up to 4th and into the playoffs. He got them to a League Cup semi-final. But with that squad, this is a massive job for him.
Former United coach Mike Phelan was part of talkSPORT's commentary team as Man United lost to Brighton yesterday, and said United needs someone that has the club's interests at heart.
Darren knows a lot about what it's like to play here, what it's like to manage here. He's certainly found out now what it's like to coach here in the last week or so. So he'll be keen as anybody to want to put his mark on his position. But I think the others that have been mentioned, you know, if we listen to speculation all the time, then Ollie and Michael Carrick, they're all Manchester United people. So if that's the direction they want to go with, and to be comfortable with that, and the supporters are comfortable with that, then why not? But ultimately, you've got to get to the end of the season, because your gamble is, where are you at the end of the season, and what managers, there may be many managers available at the end of the season, but are they really in it for what Manchester United need, which is going to be to win things, and to be consistently winning. And that's going to be, and we all know, Adrian, that the game changes, not just day by day, week by week. And 5 months, 6 months is a long way away.
Crookie, I understand that, and obviously what you're saying with Michael Carrick being a legend, but legacy, I mean, he can sort of do what he wants. And Manchester United aren't going to get relegated this season, but they can't have a season like last, finishing where they did. But has he got a clean slate? Is he able to just do whatever he wants for the rest of the season?
Well, assuming Jason Wilcox agrees, because that was part of the issue, wasn't it, with Ruben Amorim, that Jason Wilcox was starting to meddle in terms of team selection and telling him what formation to play, and obviously coming out in an interview and saying, well, I'm a frustrated coach, really. Well, if you're that good, Jason, you take the manager's job for the rest of the season, would be my advice. I think also the makeup of the squad is very different. I was looking at Carrick's last game in charge when he had those 3 matches as interim before, 1-2, drew the other, took United into the last 16 of the Champions League, beat Arsenal in his last game. It was a 4-2-3-1 formation, but the emphasis was very much on Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford out wide to stay close to the byline and play as old school wingers. United don't have that option because Ruben Amorim has been allowed to get rid of all the wingers, and they've tried to convert Patrick Dorgu into a wide player. He just doesn't have the technical ability. So I don't think this squad is particularly suited to Michael Carrick and the way he wants to play. But let's see. He's going to get the support of the Manchester United fans, no question about that. And obviously his first game in charge will be the Manchester Derby live on talkSPORT. Now, you can say that's a baptism of fire, or you could say, well, what a great game to start with, because if he gets a win in that game, then his tenure is off to an absolute flying start.
99 treble winner Dwight Yorke was on talkSPORT Breakfast with Jeff Stelling and Ellie McCoist this morning, and he wants to see this man take over at Old Trafford.
The manager that this should be going for, in my opinion, is in a job, and so that probably will take some time. But
who is that, Dwight? Who should they be going for?
I've said this maybe well over 15 months before the previous manager got the job. I think Unai Emery is the best manager in the league by a far distance. And I said it out loud again when they asked when Amrin was given the job. Unai Emery was my choice. And he proves yet again, that he is far the best candidate for the job. Whether you can get him now, 15 months ago, I think we could have gotten him. Whether you can get him now, that might be a different challenge. When you look at an elite manager, a manager with credibility, experience, played attractive football, very passionate, brings that, get the players buy into his ideas, all things as a manager and a club look for. And then you got all this, names that are bantering around the place. There's only one. I mean, Zidane comes into that because of obviously his track record and what he brings. But outside of that, there's not too many more. And I don't think there is the names that they're mentioning is just what United. And they'll find themselves maybe in 15 months' time again looking for a new manager if they don't get it right again.
Crookie, a possibility come the summer. I mean, I want to get into your brain a bit more about this because Manchester United aren't going to be making a lot of money from competitions this year as well. We know how much Ineos want to cut costs. If it's getting rid of dinner ladies, if it's getting rid of anything else that's completely ridiculous and things that the club don't need to get rid of. Dwight there has just said Unai Emery in the summer. What would be the likelihood of bringing him away from a club like Aston Villa, who have been phenomenal this season?
Well, first and foremost, he'd have to want the job. And I think he looks very happy at Aston Villa. They're more likely to be in the Champions League next year than United are. They're more likely to win silverware this season than United because, of course, they're favourites for the Europa League. They had a brilliant win at Tottenham in the FA Cup at the weekend as well. And if you look at the league table, right, it's not a coincidence that the teams in the top three all have old school managers. You've got Arsenal right at the top, who obviously got rid of Edu because Mikel Arteta pushed back against some of his recruitment decisions, and Arteta is now master of his own kingdom. You've got Manchester City under Pep Guardiola, who obviously, because of what he's done in the game, and particularly at City, he makes all the big decisions there. And Unai Emery is the main man at Villa. He runs the whole show. Monchi was the sporting director. Again, he left in the summer. He's not going to get that power and control at Manchester United because, as we've already alluded to, Jason Wilcox wants to say, Omar Barada, even Sir Jim Ratcliffe himself. And I think that could be a problem, when it comes to recruiting a permanent manager, because Thomas Tuchel and Roberto De Zerbi, two names on the list, they both spoke to United before Ten Hag was fired. They both turned down the job, as I understand it, which was one of the reasons Ten Hag stayed for as long as he did. So what's changed? If they didn't want to operate under the current structure then, why would they now? And I do wonder whether that might put Jason Wilcox's position in jeopardy. If the Manchester United owners think that his presence and his interference is going to stop them getting one of these big-name managers, then maybe it might be time for him to head for the exit.
Dwight also mentioned Zinedine Zidane there. There's a lot of rumours about Zidane potentially taking over from Didier Deschamps after the 2026 North American World Cup. Has Zidane got more sense than to join a club like Manchester United at this point in time?
Well, he's waited very patiently, hasn't he, for his next job? I mean, I can understand why Dwight Yorke would say that because he's been there, he got the T-shirt, he's a multi-Champions League winner, obviously was a brilliant player and took that into his own coaching career, but his grasp of English is not brilliant. And as I understand it, I think one of the key criteria for United at the moment is they want someone with Premier League experience, which would obviously count against him. And Luis Enrique's another who's been mentioned, the PSG manager. I think Zidane more likely to replace Deschamps. I think that's pretty much nailed on. So, yeah, I don't see him as a genuine contender at this stage.
Sticking with Man United for one more player over the weekend, it said that Marcus Rashford wants to stay at Barcelona, and I think the club want him to stay there as well. Is that a possibility that he will sign a permanent deal in the summer?
Yeah, they've got the buy option in the loan. I mean, they're not flush for cash, Barcelona, so whether they can actually afford to activate that buy option, I think is still open to debate. But I saw some images this morning of Marcus Rashford dancing around in the dressing room after that brilliant El Clasico on Sunday night. He certainly looks rejuvenated and he's back to somewhere near top form. And as much as Ruben Amorim, I think, was willing to sanction his departure, I think the hierarchy certainly wanted him off the books as well. He's on massive money, which, as you've already mentioned, Ineos want to cut costs. So at the moment, I don't see a way back for him at United. Not all the time. That the likes of Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada are still calling the shots.
Conor Gallagher's, move over to Atletico Madrid coming to an end?
Potentially. I mean, he's not desperate to leave, as I understand it, because he is still playing reasonably regularly. But I think he feels maybe it's a bit out of sight, out of mind in terms of England. Obviously hasn't been selected in the squads really since Thomas Tuchel came in, despite the fact Tuchel knows him from his Chelsea days. Aston Villa, I was told on Friday, we broke that exclusively on talkSPORT, are showing strong interest, and no surprise there because Unai Emery was keen on him when he was at Chelsea before he went to Atletico Madrid. So certainly one to track. I know there have been some Tottenham links as well, as there always seem to be when it comes to Conor Gallagher in a transfer window. They've been played down to me this morning, so I think at the moment Aston Villa more likely. He could do a job at United as well in that midfield, no question about that. But I think the uncertainty over the next manager probably has put pay to that.
He needs to find that form that he had when he was on loan at Crystal Palace, when he was like an absolute Rolls Royce. He was scoring goals, he was snapping players as well. If you get that Conor Gallagher back, I mean, you've got an absolute player on your hands, haven't you?
You have, and he's still reasonably young. He would have gone away and learnt from Diego Simeone. My understanding is that Simeone absolutely loves him as a player, and you can understand because he is that sort of bulldog in midfield, much in the manager's image. But as I say, I think he feels that if he can get back to the Premier League, he can have a strong second half of the season. Then he's got a chance of being on that plane for the World Cup. It's difficult because there's so much competition now in midfield. When you look how well Elliot Anderson has done, obviously Adam Wharton's had a few games as well. So it's not going to be easy for Conor Gallagher, but he's got more chance, I think, if he's playing regularly in the Premier League than over at Atleti.
This makes me think if he goes to Spurs as well, it's a bit of a disciplinary nightmare if you've got him and Joao Palhinha in that midfield, both picking up record numbers of yellow cards, and Spurs just wouldn't have a midfield. It would be absolutely depleted, wouldn't it, Cookie?
Well, yeah, and then Joao Palhinha did his best to get into trouble, didn't he, after that game against Villa at the weekend. That annoys me, by the way. These Tottenham players, they did it at Bournemouth in midweek. They lost the game. Then they're getting into a spat with fans. Palhinha's trying to be the tough guy after they've been knocked out of the FA Cup. Show the fight on the pitch, not once the full-time whistle's blown. I'll have
no slander against Joao Palhinha. His short stint at Fulham, one of my favourite Fulham players ever. And, this isn't any transfers, but it's transfer show. I reckon by the time that Tottenham have another stinking season come the end of the season, Joao Palhinha will definitely be back in a Fulham shirt. But that's all speculation. That's just my opinion of what I think is going to happen. Crookie, any updates on Mark Guehi? Because we know that name dominated, the summer transfer window. I mean, we're comparing it to Victor Gyökeres and also Šeško and also Alexander Isak as well. But Guehi, towards the end of the summer transfer window and now at the start of the January transfer window, is the big name. Have we got a latest off the back of obviously Crystal Palace going out to Macclesfield on Saturday in the FA Cup as well? Huge upset.
Yeah, certainly not his or their finest hour, but I think he'll stay. We're almost halfway through the window, and I know there's been a little bit of noise about Manchester City with their defensive issues, but from what I'm told, Palace's asking price is still high. You're still talking in excess of 35 million for a player who's available on a free in the summer. So I think if he goes anywhere, it will be City, but I don't see it happening. And I don't think he's in any rush, Mark Guehi, because he knows that come the summer, he's got his pick of clubs, not just in the Premier League, but in Europe as well, particularly if he has a good World Cup. It wouldn't surprise me if he holds off on a decision on his future until after that tournament in North America, because we expect him to be England's first choice centre-back. They go deep into the competition and maybe he plays his way into team of the tournament, and suddenly he can ask for a few extra noughts in his pay packet.
Something that broke last night, or speculation that broke last night and also this morning as well, Ben White potentially wanting out of Arsenal. Is it a move to another Premier League club, or could he be going abroad?
I think he's the type of player who would fancy a move abroad, maybe away from the spotlight, because we know he doesn't particularly like football, which I know as fans we always find a bit odd. I did speak to sources at Everton who were one of the clubs linked yesterday, and they played down their interest. And I think Mikel Arteta, because of what's happened in the past in terms of injuries disrupting Arsenal's bid for the title, I think he's reluctant to let anybody go in this window, even though Ben White obviously is not part of his first choice back four. They're competing on four fronts now for the rest of the season. So I think Arteta would be loath to weaken the squad. It's the same with Ethan Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly, who obviously aren't regulars in the Premier League, but I think they've both been told they won't be leaving this window. Right,
to Italia then. Tammy Abraham, who is, of course, on loan at Besiktas at this time of recording, his parent club, Roma. Has it really worked for him in Europe?
Not really, I would suggest. I mean, he did well with Frank Lampard, didn't he, when Lampard had his first spell at Chelsea, and it was Abraham's goals really that helped get them into the top four, despite the fact they were subject to a transfer embargo and therefore just had to rely on a lot of their homegrown players. As you say, did well at Villa, 25 goals in 37 league games. Is obviously part of the reason they would like to re-sign him. He went to Roma. He started well enough before injuries hit him. Then he went to Milan on loan, didn't really achieve a lot there, only 3 goals in 28 Serie A games, and he only scored 7 in 17 for Besiktas. If I was looking to buy Tammy Abraham or even bring him in on loan, I would be worried about that injury record over the last few years, because it has blighted his career, even though he's only 28. And I know he's on big money at Roma as well. I think Villa would have to smash their wage structure to bring him in. And I think with the injury record, that does come with risk attached.
So that move, Tammy Abraham, does it also free up Donnell Marlon as well? Because reports are that it might be a potential swap deal to see him go to Roma?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think he's had a good season, Donnell Marlon, and quite often
I agree.
used as the number 9, particularly in Europe. And again, Aston Villa are still in free competition. They don't have the deepest squad in the world, so I think Unai Emery would probably rally against letting anybody go. So, yeah, also swap deals, they get talked about a lot. How many actually happen? You have to have all the buy-in on both clubs' side, both players' side. The agents have to be weighed in as well, so they're difficult to do.
West Ham then, obviously you were at the London Stadium yesterday for their win over Queen's Park Rangers. I think the statistic I read, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably mentioned it on comms, I swear I saw it just as I fell asleep last night. The QPR have gone out 53 times in the third round of the Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, I love to hear that because I'm a Fulham fan, Crookie. But, I mean, every club, no matter what division you're in, if you want sort of like a little bit of a fairy tale, if you're a championship team, because we've seen championship teams get to the finals of the FA Cup over the last couple of years, going on 20 years as well. Putting up no fight whatsoever. West Ham finally picking up a decent result against a championship team who they'll no doubt be playing next season. And now it's come out this morning, you've got the little scoopy scoop, Lucas Paquetá potentially out of West Ham. What's going on, Crook?
Yeah, it raised some eyebrows when he wasn't even on the bench yesterday, because I know they made 6 changes, West Ham, but it was still quite a strong lineup that he sent out. And we're hearing this morning that Lucas Paquetá is not for the first time in his West Ham career, maybe having itchy feet, would like to go back to Brazil, where Flamengo are showing interest. There has been mention of Tottenham and Aston Villa as well, who've had interest historically, but I think as I say, at the moment, he's looking to get back to South America. I'm told that Nuno wants him to stay, so maybe he can still change his mind on that, but it was interesting that he was left out of the squad. I thought the 2 new boys up front, actually, Pablo and Castellanos, who obviously scored the goal, did give West Ham a little bit of a lift. And just looking at the feedback from West Ham fans, they don't think Lucas Paquetá has been great for the last 18 months or so, since all that betting stuff came to the fore. So maybe the supporters would be keen to let him go. But again, I think Nuno knows they're in a real dogfight and they need all the talented players they can get. The one they need to keep fit for me is Crescencio Somerville, because basically he was the one who fired them into the 4th round. And it's the first time in 3 years they've made it beyond the 3rd round as well. But you're right about QPR. More 3rd round defeats than any team in history since back in 1925, I think it is.
It's crazy about Paquetá, though. Obviously, you mentioned the betting scandal, but you can remember that first season at West Ham, and he was absolute dynamite. Then you had Manchester City rumoured to be knocking on the door for him, and it was like that Paquetá was only really going to spend half a season at West Ham, then he was going to go to a top 4 club, and now potentially going to Flamengo. It's such a strange situation, isn't it? It's just not worked.
No, it hasn't. And I think, obviously, Graham Potter it was who came out and admitted that mentally he'd been scarred by those betting allegations, which, subsequently he was cleared of, although obviously he was found guilty of not necessarily assisting with the inquiry as he should have done. But I wonder if he just wants to get away from England now and just go and lead a quiet life in Brazil. That certainly seems to be the vibe that I'm getting.
Alex, thank you so much for your time this morning. Speak to you soon with more transfer updates. You've been watching The Window on talkSPORT, brought to you by Intuit Quickbooks. Save time and unlock growth with integrated business tools and AI automation, all in one place.